Before there were labels, before factories, before nutrition charts, there was sweetness. Rare, precious, desired. For most of human history, sweet taste meant fruit, honey, or nothing at all. Sugar was a luxury, and sweetness was limited by nature itself. Corn did not begin as a symbol of sweetness. It began as survival. For thousands of years, corn fed civilizations. It was ground, cooked, shared. A grain that sustained empires long before modern nations existed. But in the modern world, corn was about to become something else entirely. By the early 1900s, the world was changing at an unprecedented speed. Cities were growing, populations were exploding, and food had a problem. It spoiled too quickly. It was expensive to transport. And sugar, real sugar, was not enough. Industry needed a new solution. Scientists began asking a dangerous question. Not dangerous to health, dangerous to tradition. What if sweetness could be manufactured? Not harvested, not imported, but engineered. Corn, abundant and cheap, became the focus. Inside corn was starch, long chains of glucose, tightly bound together. Normally, the human body breaks starch down slowly, but science found a shortcut. Using heat, acids, and enzymes, starch could be broken apart faster. Not fully into sugar, not left intact, but transformed. The result was a thick, sweet liquid, corn syrup. In the early decades of the 20th century, corn syrup was born, not as a food for families, but as a tool for industry. It was cheaper than cane sugar, easier to transport, more stable on shelves, and most importantly, it worked. Food manufacturers quickly understood the implications. Corn syrup blended smoothly into products. It prevented crystallization. It improved texture. It extended shelf life. And consumers did not complain. Most never noticed. After World War II, the world entered a new era. Convenience became king. Food was no longer just cooked. It was processed. Supermarkets replaced markets. Packages replaced people. And corn syrup was ready for its moment. Sugar had limits. Climate, geography, politics. Corn did not. In North America, corn production exploded. Subsidies encouraged overproduction. And science offered a solution to use it all. Turn corn into sweetness. Corn syrup was only the beginning. Scientists discovered that by altering the process, by converting glucose into fructose, sweetness could be intensified. The syrup could be made sweeter than sugar itself. A new version was forming. No announcement was made. No public debate. Products simply changed. The taste became slightly sweeter. The cost slightly lower. The margins slightly higher. And almost no one asked why. Corn syrup had solved a problem of industry. But it had created a new question, one that would not be asked for years. What happens when sweetness is no longer rare? When it is engineered? And when it enters the body faster than nature ever intended? Corn syrup did not arrive loudly. It did not demand attention. It simply worked, quietly, efficiently, inside a food system that was already changing faster than people realized. But behind the scenes, sweetness was about to evolve again. By the mid-20th century, scientists were no longer asking if corn could replace sugar. They were asking something far more ambitious. Could corn become sweeter than sugar itself? Inside corn syrup was glucose, a form of sugar the body processes quickly. But scientists knew something else. Fructose tastes sweeter. And if glucose could be converted into fructose, the sweetness could be intensified. Using enzymes, researchers found a way to rearrange molecules, not by adding sweetness, but by transforming it. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, a new ingredient emerged: high fructose corn syrup. Sweeter than regular corn syrup, cheaper than cane sugar, easier to transport, easier to blend. The world economy was under pressure. Sugar prices fluctuated. Imports became unstable. Corporations searched for certainty. Corn, heavily subsidized, abundantly grown, offered exactly that. High fructose corn syrup was not just a scientific breakthrough. It was an economic solution. There was no public announcement, no warning, no debate. One by one, companies replaced sugar with syrup. The taste changed slightly. The cost dropped significantly. And profits grew. Most consumers never noticed. For the first time in history, sweetness was no longer limited by nature. It was manufactured, standardized, unlimited, and it was everywhere. High fructose corn syrup moved quietly into daily life. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between. It appeared in places people never expected. Not just desserts, but bread, condiments, and foods labeled as healthy. Sweetness became constant. Inside the body, high fructose corn syrup behaves differently. It is absorbed quickly, processed efficiently, and delivered to the liver at high speed. Unlike glucose, fructose bypasses certain metabolic checkpoints. The body was not designed for this pace. By the late 20th century, patterns began to appear. Rising rates of obesity, changes in metabolic health, increased sugar consumption without people realizing it. Scientists began asking uncomfortable questions, not about one product, but about repetition. Some argued high fructose corn syrup was no different from sugar. Calories were calories, they said. Others disagreed. They pointed to absorption speed, liver metabolism, hormonal responses. The debate intensified. High fructose corn syrup did not change the human diet alone, but it fit perfectly into a system built for convenience, speed, and scale. Food became faster, cheaper, more addictive, and sweetness became the background noise of modern life. A generation grew up never knowing food without it. Sweetness was no longer a treat. It was the baseline. And once a baseline is set, it becomes difficult to notice. High fructose corn syrup solved an industrial problem, but it left society with a deeper question. If sweetness can be engineered, optimized, and hidden, how much of our food system is built around ingredients we barely understand? And what happens when awareness finally catches up? Every system reveals its consequences eventually. For decades, sweetness had been optimized, engineered, hidden, and normalized. Corn syrup, and its high fructose form, had become inseparable from modern food. But systems built for efficiency rarely ask one question: what is the cost? By the early 2000s, life moved faster than ever, and food followed the same rule: quick, cheap, always available. Sweetness was no longer a luxury. It was an expectation. Inside the body, high fructose corn syrup does not announce itself. It moves quietly, quickly. Fructose is processed almost entirely by the liver. When consumed occasionally, the system adapts. But when consumed constantly, the workload changes. Not overnight, not dramatically, but gradually. Frequency changes everything. Scientists did not find a single moment of failure. They found patterns: rising sugar consumption, changes in metabolic health, increased strain on systems never designed for constant sweetness. The debate intensified. Some experts argued that high fructose corn syrup was metabolically similar to sugar. Others pointed to absorption speed and liver overload. Both sides agreed on one thing: this ingredient was never meant to be everywhere. Corn syrup did not force itself into diets. It blended into habits, into routines, into moments that felt harmless. A little sweetness here, a little there, repeated thousands of times. What feels small adds up. For most people, corn syrup remains invisible, hiding behind long ingredient lists, alternative names, familiarity. Few stop to ask why sweetness appears in foods that were never meant to be sweet. Corn syrup is not a villain. It did not design the system. It simply fitted perfectly. A food industry built for scale, speed, and profit needed an ingredient that could keep up. Corn syrup did exactly what it was designed to do. In controlled medical settings, corn syrup and its derivatives serve a purpose: fast energy, predictable absorption, precision. The issue was never existence. It was ubiquity. Slowly, awareness began to rise. Consumers asked new questions. Labels became battlegrounds. Words like natural and clean gained power. But corn syrup was never the whole story. It was a chapter. One example of how modern food is engineered, not just for taste, but for efficiency. Once that door opens, it becomes impossible to close. How many ingredients do we eat without understanding them? How often do we confuse convenience with necessity? And how many choices are made for us before we ever enter the store? Corn began as nourishment. Neutral, simple, essential. Its transformation was not inevitable. It was chosen. The story of corn syrup is not about fear. It is about awareness. Because systems only change when people understand them. And ingredients only lose power when they are no longer invisible. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of reading differently.